It begins long after the cameras have gone, when the crime scene tape has turned brittle under sun and rain, when the headlines have faded and everyone assumes the case is gone forever. That's when detectives reopen the file, and for the first time in years, they start listening again. Every cold case starts with silence, but silence is never empty. Inside that silence are the fragments, fingerprints, receipts, half-broken truths, and testimonies that never lined up. The work of cold case investigation isn't about miracles. It's about hearing what everyone else stopped listening to. The case file in front of us was dated September 14th, 1996. The unsolved disappearance of Margaret Holt, a 32-year-old nurse who vanished on her way home from the late shift. The original investigation lasted 4 months. No witnesses, no body, no car. Her husband, Paul Holt, was questioned, cleared, and later remarried. The case was marked inactive, filed under missing/presumed dead. And for 22 years, it gathered dust. Until a new detective, Sergeant Dana Reeves, opened it again. Reeves wasn't chasing ghosts. She was following data. In her words, the file didn't feel cold. It felt unfinished. Cold case detectives start with 3 questions. What do we know? What do we miss? And what's changed since then? For Reeves, the what's changed was everything. Technology, forensics, digital reconstruction. What was once invisible could now be seen. She laid the entire 1996 case out across the evidence board. Every photograph, every timeline. Then she noticed something small. In one of the original reports, a patrol officer had written that Margaret's car, a red Toyota Corolla, was last seen heading west on 14th Street. But in an earlier witness statement, a coworker swore Margaret said she was taking the east route that night to avoid roadwork. 2 directions, 1 person. The first contradiction, the first crack in the silence. Reeves began calling the names from the old witness list. Most were disconnected numbers, some were wrong addresses. But one, Kenneth Rowe, an elderly security guard, answered. He remembered the night clearly. He said there was construction that week. They closed the eastbound lanes after 10. Reeves asked if he remembered seeing a red Corolla. There was a pause. Then Rowe said quietly, I saw one. Parked, headlights off, right outside the old factory lot. The factory had shut down in 1994, 2 years before Margaret disappeared. The area had since become overgrown, fenced, and forgotten. It was a place no one thought to look because it was already abandoned. Cold case detectives often say, you don't visit a crime scene, you revisit it. Reeves went to the old factory grounds. The original chain-link gate was still there, rusted but intact. Inside, nature had taken over. Tall grass, broken windows, concrete littered with leaves. And then she saw it. A patch of ground near the far fence line. Uneven, a slight depression, just deep enough to catch the morning light differently. She called for a ground-penetrating radar scan. The readings came back irregular. Something was buried beneath the soil, large, metallic, and hollow. Within hours, the excavation team unearthed a heavily corroded car frame. The VIN plate was barely readable, but it matched Margaret Holt's Toyota. After 22 years, her car had been found. What most people forget is that every vehicle has its own memory. Even after decades, forensic science can recover stories trapped in rust and plastic. The coroner's unit carefully opened the sealed trunk. Inside were fragments of clothing, and beneath them, a single gold bracelet engraved with the initials MH. But there was something else. A melted warp badge. It wasn't Margaret's. It belonged to a security company that serviced the nearby factory in the mid-90s. The name printed faintly on the plastic, K. Rowe. The same man who just told Reeves he saw the car parked there that night. Reeves was stunned. Rowe's statement placed him near the scene, but the discovery of his badge inside the car meant more than coincidence. She requested his employment records. They showed that in 1996, Kenneth Rowe had access to the factory grounds and was one of the last people to patrol that area before the site closed. But there was one key detail in the fine print. Rowe's badge had been reported missing weeks before the disappearance. So, was it planted or stolen? To find out, Reeves dug into Rowe's past. A clean record. No arrests. No history of violence. But something else surfaced, a complaint filed by a nurse at Margaret's hospital. Rowe, working part-time security there during staff shortages, had reportedly followed her to her car after a shift several times. The complaint was dismissed as misunderstanding. No one connected it to the disappearance until now. Cold case work is part science, part storytelling. You reconstruct events not as they were remembered, but as they were recorded. Reeves rebuilt the final 90 minutes of Margaret Holt's life using timestamp from her shift logs, security camera snapshots, and phone tower data newly retrieved from archived cell tower backups. The pattern was clear. Margaret left the hospital at 11:32 p.m. At 11:45, her phone connected briefly to a tower near the old factory. And then, silence. Her husband, Paul, called her at midnight. The call went unanswered. When you map the timeline, it tells its own story. Margaret didn't vanish randomly. She was intercepted. Modern forensics sees what the past overlooked. Traces of organic material recovered from the car's trunk matched a male DNA profile, degraded but viable. It wasn't Kenneth Rose, and it wasn't Paul Holtz either. The DNA belonged to Jason Ward, another former factory employee who had died in 2001. His name had never once appeared in the original investigation. Reeves pulled his file. Ward had a criminal record, assault, trespassing, and one charge of stalking that was dropped for lack of evidence. He worked the same late shifts as Margaret at the hospital as a janitor. The discovery forced a new perspective. The badge in the trunk wasn't evidence of Rose's guilt. It was evidence of his victimhood. Rose's badge, lost weeks before, may have been used by Ward to access the factory grounds unnoticed. Rowe had unknowingly placed himself at the scene, trying to report what he saw, not realizing his own name was already part of the cover-up. Reeves went back through his call records. Rowe had phoned the police the night after Margaret vanished. The call was never logged. A clerical error, or something darker. The system had silenced a crucial witness for 2 decades. Reeves visited Rowe again. He was now 81. Confined to a nursing home. She showed him a photo of his old badge. He broke down immediately. Through tears, he told her he had followed the missing nurse's case for years, feeling guilty for not insisting harder that someone listen to him. He said, "I saw her car there. I called it in, but they said it was a prank." The shame had haunted him ever since. Rowe wasn't the villain. He was the witness buried by negligence. By the time the lab confirmed Ward's DNA, the suspect was long dead. There would be no arrest, no trial, just an ending, quiet, incomplete, and human. When detectives close a cold case, they don't find justice. They find truth. And truth is often the only thing left that can still be recovered. Reeves closed her notebook and signed the final report. The file was marked, resolved by Forensic Association. But she kept one photo on her desk, the badge, the car, and the empty road behind the factory. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Every cold case is a test of patience and humility. It's about believing that silence can still speak, if you're willing to listen long enough. What solved the case isn't luck or genius. It's persistence. It's the understanding that every detail, no matter how small, matters to someone. And sometimes, the only difference between a tragedy forgotten and a story finally told is one detective who refuses to stop looking. This was Trace Crime Files, where even after the trail goes cold, the truth keeps breathing. This was Trace Crime Files. Subscribe for more stories where truth is stranger than fiction, and justice is never as simple as it seems.